I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. All right, we'll start off with a motion to approve the minutes for tonight, January 27th, 2025.
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And can we get a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting on January 6th, 2025?
Motion to approve the minutes from January 6th, 2025.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are good. All right, school committee chairperson comments. I don't have any additional comments tonight. Save all my questions for later. Let's move on to community comments. I don't know if we've got anybody in the room tonight. Anybody? Sam, anybody online raise their hand to talk?
I see one person online, but I do not see a hand.
All right, well, that'll be the conclusion of public comments for this evening. Next up, we've got student comments. And I'll introduce, Dr. Cohen, I'll let you introduce Sean.
Yes, and before we go to the students, this is a big month. I don't know if you were aware, but if you look in front of you, it is National School Board Appreciation Month. And so I just want to pause and say,
We got a whole month.
Yeah, I missed it at the last meeting. So happy School Board Appreciation Month. And we have
Did it show a sufficient amount of appreciation presenting it to us at the end of the month?
yeah.
I feel like I've missed 26 days of this.
All right. I'll make sure it's in my calendar. Here, and everyone in the room will help me remember. But thank you. It's not always, you don't always get a lot of thanks, but you know, you are volunteers that come here and do a lot of great work for the district and certainly support me and all of us. So thank you for that. And we have nice little pads of paper with our mission statement on it and portrait of one ourselves.
Thank you.
A little gift for you. But now, the bigger highlight is we have Sean Bailey here, who is our new student rep that will be joining us. So congratulations to Sean, and he'll be carrying on the torch of our amazing seniors and adding to us, and we'll continue to rotate through. So I'll hand it over to both of you. Welcome.
Right.
Wants to go first?
I'd like to start off with a big one, which we had 4 students from the Mendon-Upton department that auditioned and earned a spot at the Central District's Music Festival. This is impressive because we're competing with a bunch of students all over Central Mass. The students that did get in got to play a couple Saturdays ago at Mechanics Hall in Worcester. It was a beautiful venue where 3 students worked with the jazz department and another with the concert band, and the music was amazing. We got to engage with really amazing instructors. It was just a really good, fun experience. These students that got in also earned the privilege to audition for the All-State Festival. And you know, we'll hopefully hear good news soon from that. Now, in other news, this past Saturday, we had Nipmuc Model UN students who got to attend a conference at Lexington High School. These students studied and presented their findings with the roles of different nations and their views on recent issues such as cybersecurity, you know, like the TikTok ban, and inflation acts on how the global economy is going. I think I'll pass it to our new member.
Alrighty, nice to meet you, everyone. So my name's Sean. So I'll be talking about 3 things today. So first is the Inspired Learning Day sessions. So we all got a chance to sign up for different Inspired Learning Day sessions, and they were just released back to us. So Inspired Learning Day will be held on February 6th, and my specific session is Best Buddies, where we'll learn and play some inclusive games. And then for the later half of the day, we'll have a Best Buddies speaker come in. We'll talk about some disability awareness training aimed at fostering empathy and breaking down misconceptions about intellectual and developmental disabilities. And this is just one of the many sessions that we have. Like, I wrote down a few notable ones that I sound pretty cool. So we have intro to 3D printing and design, career exploration, digital marketing simulations, and wall hugs for tiny hearts, which is all about creating fleece blankets for NICU patients. The next thing I wanted to bring up was DECA districts. So on January 8th, we brought 142 students to Nichols College to present either a year-long business-focused project or compete in role-play style business situations. We had over 70 students qualify for a state conference, which will be held on February 27th to March 1st in the Boston Seaport, where over 4,000 students will come together to compete. And then finally, we have the Childhood Cancer Awareness Game. So this Friday, Miss Annunciata is hosting her second annual Childhood Cancer Awareness Game. This will be a big game for the boys basketball team against Hopedale starting at 6:30. So I will be there along with many other students to join in solidarity for those impacted with Fanconi anemia. So yeah,
Welcome, welcome.
thank you
I
so much.
compliment you on your choice of names. I think it's really good. And the way you spell it is perfect.
Yes, agreed.
One question for the two of you guys. Do you think that, how do you guys get the word out of what your role is? Like, do students know if they want to come talk to you as their representative? Do you guys set up like once a month a table in the cafeteria or in the newsletter, or he email me, or how do you communicate out that you're a constituent kind of thing?
Honestly, it's a lot of word of mouth. And, you know, people talk, especially during lunches and through extracurricular. We talk about the great things that we're doing and how we plan to present them to the school board. So that is where we kind of engage with the other students at our school. Well, that's one way we spread the word. But also, it's kind of like whenever something really big happens, it's gonna be talked about a lot during the school day, especially if it happens right before school day. So when that talk is bubbling up, that's when we can say, hey, if you have any like insight about this or any commentary, you can come to us and we'll present it.
Just as a newer member, sort of what I just was starting telling people about how I'm a part of this now. And so a lot of people have come up to me, and I often hear a lot of people talking about like the great experiences they've had. So I think that's mainly what I'm gonna talk about in these meetings, is like big things I've heard about.
Sure. So don't be afraid to spread the word though.
Yeah.
Make sure you're
Yeah,
in student newspapers and other communications so people know who you are.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys. All right, Dr. Cohen.
All right, we have a mixture of some mid-year progress on the strategic action plans. Now, I took a different approach. You can let me know after if you like it or not, but because we have so many presentations tonight, I pulled out just a few highlights, but I sent you the entire tracking document so you can look at all of the action steps and where we are. I'm not going to go through all of those. I'm just going to give you a few highlights, and I'm also going to give you just some updates related to budget and MSBA and some other topical areas as well. Are you able to put that up there, Sam, the presentation? Please. It's the Canva one. There you go. Awesome. And if you could go to the next slide.
Sorry.
Great, thank you. All right. So I broke it up. We have 4 priorities that we're focused on for our district strategic plan for this year. And we're continuing a lot of work with our deeper learning. And I mentioned this last time, I've tried to every other meeting or so give a few highlights related to our strategic priorities. So for example, I pulled some examples out at the last meeting that we had 2 meetings ago. But right now we have, this is our next iteration. It's not final. So a lot of people haven't seen this yet. We're just, it's our next iteration of our deeper learning framework. But we have 4 main elements of it for deeper learning: agency, reflection, revision, authenticity, and collaboration. And these are areas that we've been working on throughout the year. Our goal is to continue to embed this in some of our upcoming PD work that we have. Some might happen at the next PD meeting, or some PD day coming up in a week or so, and also later on in the year. But what we're finding is we're trying to grow the understanding of our framework, and we're pretty happy with where we're at right now in having this be a tool for communication. But then we have the additional layers that we're building out. So the one layer, as a reminder, we have the authenticity protocol. We have a draft student agency protocol. Heading into next year, we'll start to have a reflection revision one. We'll have one for each of these categories, but it takes some time to develop, try it out, bring it back. And we also are looking for working with partners around look-fors or other elements and descriptors that can help us better and teachers better understand deeper learning. So it's a part of a lot of our conversations. We're hoping to maybe build out a website once we start to have more of these tools and share that. Another factor of deeper learning, and I am going through I was reviewing all of our updates that we did, and we haven't talked about this, so I thought this would be an interesting element to share, is our community partners database. NIPMUC had shared out a tool with the community a few times asking if you want to be a partner. I know NISCO is going to be building upon this as well. And when I went into the spreadsheet and I just did a little mini snapshot, I had to do it so I couldn't pull people's names. So I just did a snapshot of the organizations and company names, the fields, but there was a wide range that we had in there, and there I didn't count them up, but I feel like it was close to 40 or 50, and it seems to be growing every time that I've taken a look at it. So I'm just really, I know it's something we talked about and we worked on over the years to try to get partners, but I feel like we're really poised. And I know Tara Bennett, a lot of work with the innovation career pathways at the high school. We've done a lot of work in trying to grow this as well. But I was excited to see it. And one area is in our Inspired Learning Days, where we are always trying to have partners that we can bring in and work closely with us. So I want to give that highlight. Any questions on either one of those? All right, I'm going to jump to priority 2. Thank you. Some of these things you probably have already heard about a few times, but I was really excited was it last Friday or the Friday before? I wasn't tracking my days. 2 Fridays ago, on our last PD day, I was able to observe the whole child review taking place here at the high school. And what was interesting about it was the connection between, if you look on the left side of the screen and the right hand side of the screen, it was all together. You had teams of teachers and staff members. They had a set group of names from an advisory, and they had a protocol they were working through. And when they met, they looked at the student data in Open Architects, and they were using, and I made sure there wasn't any student names or anything in here, but you were able to click into a student and look at MCAS, or when you do surveys about your strengths, or students do surveys related to their career interests, that will all be filled in here in college applications, etc., and also some of the panorama data. So they look at that, and there were educators in the room who knew the students as well, and they used Open Architects as this tool for the whole child review. And then what was really nice is it was really strength-based. So when you look over on the right-hand side, in that review, what they were doing is looking at the domains of academics and social emotional behavior, health and well-being, family and home life, any of these, but it was, what are our students' strengths? And all they did is sit around and say, these are all the strengths of our students, and these are ways that, either based off of what the students said or ways that we know we can better engage with them. And what was nice is I loved that model, and I've seen it in all the schools as well, and it's been very strength-based in all the schools. But what's nice is they had a clear connection, and our schools are working to take from the whole child review and then bring in the DCAP and bring in accommodations and bring in more strategies for building these success plans for students. And then for students who might have additional needs, this data then can feed into some of the interventions or additional supports that might happen in the student support teams. So in the past, you've heard us talk about the DCAP. You know, we built that over the years, and now we have a digital DCAP, which is pretty amazing. And now we have the assessments, the whole range of types of assessments. And now we're bringing it together with the student success team, which was separate, and we're starting to integrate it. We're not done with that yet. We're revising forms, but it's been really excited to see how everything's starting to come together as you're in our MTSS kind of systems of support that we're trying to build. I feel like someone's just gonna ask, oh, I saw your hand raised. Yes.
When you talked about when we were getting surveyed about our strengths,
Mhm.
I remember I was in like 10th grade in the history class, and we were each given a sheet to like think about how what we felt you were strong in and how we wanted to use that later in life. And I feel like that was the moment I really started kind of getting my gears
Mhm.
thinking about how I was like guide my path after high school. So yeah, I really appreciate the time they gave us to like really reflect on ourselves.
That's awesome. I'm glad you shared that. Something else too, you know, the like Portrait of a Learner Scholars, that also was data that was in here. So we had access to the Portrait of a Learner Scholar because they focused on sophomores who had completed them last year. So as our freshmen are coming in and starting to complete them, there's a lot of information in those where they're talking about their strengths and competencies and their path. And that you could pull a lot out of those profiles as well, which is really interesting. So I feel like we're trying to build the ways that it's more student-centered in our review. All right, keep going. All right, when we head into priority 3 around equity, diversity, inclusion, and well-being, this was recent, so I gave a little image of this, and we fortunately have a lot of our administrators here tonight, so you can always ask some follow-ups, but we realized with some of our younger students, the panorama survey didn't quite work for our younger students. So they've been working really hard this year as a team, SEL team, and working on new screeners and new assessments. So this is an example of a SEL check-in that is a form that they can complete during family time each month and almost have more ongoing check-ins in addition to some of the screeners that we're taking a look at. On the right, talks about one of the areas that we wanted to design opportunities for community members to learn about the district and to ask questions through district office hours, consults. Sometimes that's internal. So we have a lot of consults internally that we've added. But I just wanted to make sure that you saw that I'm going to be trying a superintendent community circle. And this idea, I can't take credit for it, but was a coach that I worked with for Leading Now. And she did it in her community and kind of took the concept. The idea is that it's a little different from just, giving a little presentation. The first part is a presentation about key points. So I can bring up any topics that people might be interested in or give highlights I might want to share. And I thought it might be good also around the, building projects and some of that as well. But it can be other topics as well. And then, having people come and celebrate what good is happening. I can share what's the great things happening, but people want to sit around. So if I did a community circle with students, you'd be able to say, these are all the good things that are happening that I can share as well. And then just contribute to the conversation. So that's where concerns and questions and things that people want to learn more about. Last year, when I tried the coffee consult, I did, I don't know what I called it, but coffee with Cohen. I thought a lot of people would come, but they didn't. It was good coffee, but good conversation. But it was I tried the mornings, and so I'm gonna go for evenings, and we'll give it a shot. Cool. So that's something new. And then finally, priority 4, community engagement, kind of building off of that. I love this picture, just something to come back to. If you remember, our students were talking about their reflections and the work they were doing. They presented earlier this year, the 4th grade students, about the portfolios of work that they're building, which is really exciting because we're hoping that that can then, once these 4th graders are moving on to the middle school, that we can start to carry over this concept of this revision and feedback and being able to talk about your learning and have that go and grow up from the elementary upwards as they go. And also just a great picture about math night. We're trying to host a number of curriculum nights. We've had literacy nights and math nights. And early in the year, we changed, if you remember, our formats at NetMuck as well for the showcases. But we are trying to engage with the community in different ways. These are some great examples as well. Any questions on those?
I like the superintendent community circle idea. I'm curious. I see 4 dates on here. Is it just open to anyone who
Yeah.
wants to
You
come?
could come to all 4.
I was gonna say it might be interesting if like each school was targeted for one, like, you know, open to everyone. It feels very generic and kind of
Yeah.
optional, and you might get similar results. But if you
Yeah.
focus like the 11th is Memorial, like invite everybody from Memorial to that one. Maybe there's more obligation.
All right.
Or even, not even
I will think it, yeah.
specialized, but even if it just where you host it, it might.
I
Yeah.
did,
You might.
I
Get a
did
little
try,
bit of that
I
vibe.
did try that last time. And I thought about doing it this time. I thought it would be good to, if you host it here, so let's say you're an elementary parent or even a middle school parent and you've never been here, it's an opportunity for you to see things. I thought it would be a good window, and these are all like adult, you know, size spaces, or like, you know, the gathering room, if it's a smaller group, or we could come here if it's a larger group. So I did vary it, and it's easier to kind of come here and do this setup sometimes. But we'll see. But yeah, I definitely thought about that. And maybe as we get closer, if there are set topics, when I do additional communications out, I can share. My idea is maybe some of the, you know, building some of the district priorities is what I talked about a lot with people. And then, you know, I can talk about specifics. Yeah. Keep sending ideas though. And then, you know, maybe it'll be a full house. So it'll be good. All right, let me go to the next one. Great. So we're all set with the mid-year. All right, if when you read through the tracking document, if you have questions or something, that just feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to do follow-ups on that as well. All right, so we wanted to give you some state budget news. The past Wednesday, our governor released her 61.5 billion budget proposal for this year. And overall, it raised K-12 education accounts by 5.6%. The minimum Chapter 70 funding was set at 75 per student. That was really good news to hear, because typically it is a lower number when that governor's budget comes out, and usually goes up. So the fact that it started at 75 is a good sign for us. For our increase right now, you can see that it went up by 1.11%. And you can see we're getting a little bit more than we were before, because it's all good news, let's say, on the state aid front. So we're happy about that. Total net increase in state aid for us right now is at $360,009. Couple updates from the state circuit breaker. Their appropriation is going to go up, or supposed to go up by 39 million to 532 million. It's too early to tell if that's going to be sufficient, because they've had big increases in deficit this year. The administration's demonstrated their recognition of like program high costs, and we've talked about that a lot. And we'll see if it continues to be favorable for us. School transportation reimbursement, the state budget applied 50 million in a new combined school transportation reimbursement account. to augment aid for regional transportation and non-resident vocational transportation programs. The estimated increase for regional is 16.5 million, which would bring it to 95% reimbursement level. The non-resident program would rise from let's see, $1 to, no, 1.0 to 6.2 million. I can't read my own notes here. Regional transportation for us is up about $186,000, which is big, because if you recall, we had a decrease last year. Let's see, keep going. Charter reimbursement. State charter reimbursement account sees a decrease of 20 million, bringing it to just 93% of current projections of full reimbursement. The SOA required full funding of the account and contains language that would enforce that, but trends are showing that in most years, early projections of upcoming year's costs are significantly higher than the final numbers. For example, in FY24, the final reimbursement was 30 million less than what had been projected. The legislature will have the advantage of more current, probably lower projections when they prepare their budgets this spring. So for charter tuition reimbursement, we have an increase of 30,000 about, and sending tuition about 57. Again, this is all pretty good news. And then the MLC, minimum local contributions were released by DESE on Wednesday. Mendon's increase was 120,534, and Upton's is a really large increase, much higher than it has been in some other years. So 631,365 right now. So that I will pause. Jay will answer any specific questions, but you know, that's the overview, quick overview of the data from some analysis on the state data and what we have. And then when we have our next budget meetings and also future school committee, when we get more info, we'll keep, you know, coming in and presenting more thoughts.
So Jay, I think this is a question on the MLC, for everybody watching from home.
Mhm.
So does this mean Upton's contribution would go up 600,000? Does Mendon need to come up with the same rate, or are both of these minimum contributions beyond any increase beyond? That wasn't a clear question. but-
Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah, I know
asking.
what you mean.
So the minimum contribution is just one of 3 funding buckets from the town. So the towns have to fund this increase in minimum contribution, but they have another line called operational additional in both towns, which is prior override money.
Yeah.
They could decrease that amount because maybe they can't afford a net increase of 631,000. I don't have a handle yet on why there's such a discrepancy between the two. I do remember that last year, Upton was, I think, 4% from target share, and Mendon was 2% from target share. But I haven't really gotten into the spreadsheet yet to figure out exactly what played into it. The issue we're going to have, I think, is if Upton can't afford a net increase of 631,000 for, you know, between all 3, right? Hypothetically, that means Mendon's contribution will go down because proportionally they have to come down.
Which happened a couple
match.
years ago.
Right. So we're still, I mean, I'm sure Mendon's thrilled at a $120,000 increase, but I'm sure Upton is not.
Yeah.
It's a good question. All right, next slide. All right, I love this picture, which I like to mention every time. I put in the check marks for you. I know we talked about this at capital planning, and we have successfully, we're very proud of ourselves, made it through all of the requirements in that preparation phase 1 there.
This is for the roof.
Yes, for the roof. Thank you.
Okay.
And so if you go up to the upper left, we submitted the statement of interest, and then we ended up in this process. We immediately did the initial compliance certification. We are not required to have a school building committee, but we are. That's why it's in gray, but we'll talk about that next slide. Jay and I worked diligently on revising and creating sections of our maintenance plan, which was a requirement, and we submitted that over the weekend. So we already received the local authorization of funding. So we've met all of this. Next week on February 5th, we have a meeting with MSBA, and that's when we'll be hopefully hearing about the OPM and heading into the second phase, the scope definition phase as they have it here. And we'll learn about the project team and more details on that. We will keep you posted, but we finally have all the check marks on that. If we go to the next slide, thank you. We talked about this at the capital planning meeting, and I'm going to try not to steal all your thunder about capital planning. I know you'll talk about it later, but we put out in the newsletter those who might be interested in joining the building committee to meet the list that we had, and we agreed that it might make sense to bring forward the names that we had tonight. And then it still would be open for some who might be interested, and then we can bring names forward at the next meeting as well. But from the district, we have the superintendent, director of facilities, director of finance operations, co-principals, athletic director. For residents that came forward, we have a Mendon resident, Kyle Raposo is a construction superintendent for Consigli and specializes in schools. And he built Woodland in Milford as well as Stoughton High and Sharon High School. A Mendon resident, Nicole Casello, who's on MUCP and is also a construction manager and has a degree in architecture with almost 30 years of experience. Upton resident, Bill Casey, who you've met and is presented here as well from MUCP, and he's a building and grounds foreman for many years in Easton. And both the town administrator and town manager requested if they could be members of the committee as ex officio members. They can answer questions and be part, but wouldn't be voting members. That's where we're at. And and we need to discuss, we need at least one school committee member. If you had two and needed to rotate and kind of share a responsibility, that's another way to do it. I know there is overlap with capital planning on some of the work. I know we have a lot of committees, but that's just another way we could do it. But we would need at least one on the committee. I don't know if you wanted to discuss that as well, but it would be also good to have a vote tonight on these.
Sounds good. Let's discuss. Let's look forward for a second. Other folks, I think Dr. Collins' comment is probably pretty good, right? I think not that this is 100% related, but we did a really nice job last year for negotiations. I don't think anybody was there at all 15 sessions, but we had enough of a group that we always had representation. We always got 2 or 3 people at every meeting. Really. So I mean, Dr. Collins was told against it. Even having 3 members, so we're trying to get a couple of us each time would be a whole thing.
Whatever you want to do. And we didn't set time, but I mentioned that what seemed to work in the past, at least for me, meaning I have lots of other meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays often, is that maybe the meetings could be the opposite Mondays to school committee meetings, because I don't schedule other meetings on Mondays other than school committee. We did that with strategic planning before, and then at least we knew school committee members often had that, but we didn't pick a night, but just throwing it out there.
This is intended to last next week, right? Would it start next week?
I don't know how soon we would have our first meeting, I think.
Okay, so it's not set yet.
Yeah, we didn't set a first meeting date.
Probably
We
through,
want to get together relatively soon.
this is through the end of the construction of the roof.
So this would really be, I think it's all going to come down to what kind of success we have, right? So,
Yep.
The roof is partially funded by the state and would be partially funded by the towns if we can get through a successful vote with Warren. Same with the additional capital committee asks that we'll talk about later. So I think when we talked about it at the capital planning meeting last week, right, is potentially not to make subcommittee on subcommittee, but there could be different groups within this. Probably don't need a ton of people focused on the roof. Maybe that's just a quick update at each meeting, but you're going to get more parent involvement from, if we end up being successful with fields and tracks and bleachers and grandstands and snack shack, all the stuff that can come with a sports complex or sports environment. Plus some of the voting and approving for the other safety items that we have within the school, the PA system. And
Just to add, Move is a move, that's pretty straightforward. But, whether it's the management system, with a track and field complex, that's a much more complex project. It's going to all been designed and whatnot over time. So, just for the move, that's what was kicking us off, because that's the first thing in the line. If we do succeed in getting the debts we at, all those other projects would fall under this committee as well. That would likely take up a larger percentage of mind share as far as actual topics being discussed.
And we think there'd be, I don't say full wind down, but probably in the future, less meetings on the capital planning side. Right?
Yeah.
We don't want to drop it. I think we've done a really good job getting it going, and it's a forever thing, not just a right now thing, but even if it met a couple times a year, then this was meeting.
Yeah, that was my thing before I signed up for it. I wanted to understand where we're going with capital planning and how frequently we're gonna be meeting before signing up for a building.
It needs to be up to all of us. My gut says that, capital planning in the future goes to, 3-4 times a year, once a quarter. And something like this is gonna be sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month. So I think this would, maybe to your point, be a lot like strategic planning, superintendent search committee.
So, are all three of this capital planning numbers planning on being the building committee meetings? Or?
We haven't got there.
That's what we're discussing.
I'm trying to get to that point, so I'm wondering if you really need my help. I'll volunteer for it. If you don't, then, it just.
Listen, I'll just be very, very candid, right? I think sometimes we gotta pick and choose where our strengths are. I think a lot of this is covered on sports, athletics, and complex. I've got zero experience in that. My kids have never played a sport. I've never been to a game. I'm more than happy to help represent, on a semi-regular basis on a building committee. I'd be a member, but I think there's people who have better experience in that area that would know a lot more about what goes into a sports complex. Or have future kids that would be in that space.
So I do have more time than you.
Yes.
I do have experience in sending kids through sports in high school. I've got a lot of facilities experience, so yes, I agree.
All right.
So I hear Sean.
Yeah.
I'm also happy my kids will eventually be there one day, and I do coach youth basketball right now, so. And own rental property, so I have some building experience.
Okay, great.
I'm kind of a middle ground, I guess, between you guys, where my kids young and involved in sports, but I have no experience whatsoever. I'm happy to maybe be as an alternate if that's how we want to do it. If you choose primary members, if you
Sounds
like
like having anybody who wants to get on.
Is there any?
Yeah.
I have no expertise in any of the areas that we're talking about, but I'm happy to be backup for anybody who needs it.
Yeah.
Tori, if we had a meeting where 4 of us show up, do we have to run into any issues with?
Say that again.
If we had a meeting where 4 of us showed up,
Yeah, we can't do a quorum.
Is that
a quorum?
quorum issue?
You have to post.
Yeah, we have to post.
All right, fine, good. We'll keep it 3 or less, and I think, maybe Sean plus all the, capital planning committee members. Good, Jeff.
You have to post for 3 too.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can't, that 4th member can't be like a participant.
Yeah, but even,
If you had
if they're
someone
saying even
observing,
3,
they
is
can't, but then now it's a school committee meeting. Now you're actually, it's a school committee meeting, not like a
So you could be an observer
Yeah,
and not participate.
yeah.
Can't even do it that way?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
If
we've
you have
had
4
that.
school committee people, you have to post as a meeting, just. to
Well,
be
it's still
safe.
posted as an,
No, as a school committee meeting to attend the building.
all right, why don't we take that
I don't know
offline? We
that
can
for
look into
sure.
that. We can reach out to.
I've seen it the other way, but it's all good.
So good.
I'll just keep it at 3 and then we won't worry about it.
Sounds good.
All right, last
Jay was
slide.
saying even
Oh, do
3.
you have to vote?
We could do 2 and
Do 200 alternate, because Jay was saying three's a no-no as well.
That makes sense.
Why don't we take that offline? Let's reach out to MC,
That'll be fun.
whatever it is. Yes. And just get some clarity. All right.
You have to hold and vote. Will we clarify that?
No, I think we can take a nomination to vote John and Jim and Matt and I as alternative backups to fill in when needed.
So moved.
Bingo.
And also to nominate the listed people here as well. From
As presented.
as presented, yeah.
Yeah.
Have a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect.
And then finally, I just want to put a couple of things in front of you related. I shared with you the latest draft of school calendar development we go through a few iterations of this. And couple of things to want your feedback on. November conferences. This year, we did them the week of Thanksgiving. And I did a survey out to the community, and at first, when they were coming in, I thought people were saying they didn't like it, but when I last checked, it was exactly even of those who liked it, those who didn't, and that's also based off of 40 respondents, but that's who responded. And there were advantages of having that all kind of in 1 week. If you think about student learning, the fewer weeks we disrupt having it being a full week, the better. And we try to aim for that, but we also don't want to be overly burdensome for staff or families either if it didn't work out. So we tried that. And so that's one talking point. The second talking point around the calendar is around winter break. We have it right now where we'd come to school on that Monday, and then it would be half day on that Tuesday, so the 22nd and 23rd. But then on that Friday, the 2nd, we wouldn't come back on that date. And I know
Makes
some
sense.
districts are gonna take the full 2 weeks. Some do different things, but that's where we landed when we were looking to see where the end of the school year was for recommendation. I put in the school committee schedule. If you could take a look at that between now and the next meeting. And we always kind of miss something. We were trying, I moved one of the dates because of it fell on one of the Jewish holidays, so I had to move it. So it got a little bit out of sync a little bit, and we try to avoid having it the Monday after holidays or weeks, but sometimes it just works out that we have to. So just take a look at that. And then you can see where we're at right now for kind of our PD days. But you can always just reach out to me if you just have thoughts, and then we'll bring forward after we get feedback. We're meeting with the Teachers Association too this week, and we send it to them and give them feedback. So we're sharing it with you and sharing with them this week.
Yeah, Halloween or PD.
Yeah,
So stands out to me as
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
As the parent who would be in charge home with the sugar apple children, my wife is in PD. Yeah, that's not much of a fan that one, but
Whatever you guys think. You will notice though, if we do that half day on that day, then it helps with a little more continuity of not having so many days in November by pushing it the week forward.
I think this looks good. Do you have any full PD days starting school year?
Yep, we do in the beginning of the school year. We have one in March and we have one in
October.
Oh, March.
Right
So
now
that's gonna be
it's-
in March.
the version is October. This version is October.
My blush reaction is, this looks like a very efficient calendar, right? Having seen another school system's calendar that does everything you say, they're almost getting out July 1st, but the fact that you've got, a best case scenario of July 12th, get out, that's a very efficient calendar. I'm sorry, June 12th. What I said? July 12th. But yeah, June
And we
12th.
still have to do the triple check of
Yeah.
the number of days it's about that day, but yeah.
At
But
first
yeah.
blush, it looks efficient.
Yeah. So just, if you have feedback, you've heard things, if you, think about it, bring it back to our leadership team, teachers your input, and then hopefully we try to have it done by February. So that's our goal.
we put this in the I don't know how you broadcast this to families, draft of it, or is it just?
No, not the draft of it. No, what I did is I put a survey and asked some questions about PD days, and actually they all wanted Fridays.
It's just,
I
no
asked
one
some
actually gets to
questions.
see the draft. Did you just ask questions to?
Yeah.
There, okay.
Yeah, and then there were some misconceptions because they wouldn't necessarily know the contract too. So some questions that came up were about things that we can't change because they're in the contract. But it was only a few comments too. Right, that's all I had. I know that was a lot with both things, but all important stuff. So thank you.
All right, move over to new business. I think Jen D'Angelo is gonna start off with her budget request.
Yeah.
You are.
Jen D'Angelo, coming in town. Can I interject before?
Oh, yeah, Matt's gonna start off. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Sorry for that.
Just, this is my semi-regular conflict of interest statement. This employee restrictions memorial. Interest in budget. Discussion, as far as I know, the discussion might involve her position, but it still constitutes appearance of conflict of interest, which I have to disclose. Which I am not. So as long as we're not discussing things that have a direct material impact on her position or her compensation, I am free to participate. That's all.
So we'll skip the slide when I nominate her for. So hi, I'm Jen D'Angelo, Director of Student Support Services, for those of you who don't know me. So I'm going over the budget requests. It's a quick presentation this year, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I knew you had a lot going on tonight, so I tried to keep it to a minimum. So just starting off with a quote, without continual growth and progress, words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. There's some of our, back to the cute kids. So just a couple of pictures. The top left is the golf tournament that we run every year. This is our 3rd year running the golf tournament for all abilities, and that's hosted by Shining Rock. We partner with them. The middle was we took the students to a live production at the Stadium Theater of The Little Mermaid right before the holidays. So that was exciting. And then the last one was during a Nipmuc event supporting our Best Buddies program at the high school. All right, Sam, you're on. So some investments in our students over the last couple of years. For those of you who've been here have heard this before, we've added some in-district supports and programming to meet the diverse needs of our students. We've used assessment data to drive decision-making. That aligns a lot with our new IEP that we launched this year. So last year, remember, we did a year of training. We worked with a couple of contracted providers, Alan Bloom, who got us ready. So across the state this year in September, we all rolled out the new IEP form. And a lot of that was data-driven elements. So that was kind of the shift that happened. So last year we did a ton of training around that. We talked about writing measurable goals that were attainable within that year's time. We talked about the IEP. We did a crossover document to make that kind of a streamlined process for our staff and students and then our families. And then this year, it aligned with our use of data to drive those decisions within that team process. And then the training and development of staff, which we've talked about for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's building capacity internally by training our staff members in specially designed programs and instructional practices so that we can meet the needs here in district. Any questions about any of those?
Have you gotten any feedback from the new IEP form? Really like it, hate it?
No. No. In what way?
All did, like we revised it, Hampton. What's the meaning like it? They.
No, well, so I think sometimes when we ask for feedback, we have to be a little cautious because sometimes if we ask for feedback, there's an expectation that we're going to take the feedback and make changes with it. And it's a state form, so we don't really have the ability to do that. We have done some parent trainings. All our team chairs are actually using the document during the meeting so that families are kind of adjusted to it before they get it home. So we've done some of that work, but as far as feedback, we haven't really done it because unfortunately, if they say that they want, yeah, like I don't have the ability to change it because it's a state form. But we have done some trainings and we've done some work with our team chairs. So when families come in, we're working through it and talking through what it looks like and some of the changes they'll see when they get it at home. So if that makes sense.
Can I just add a comment? We see, at least our level, I love the student voice that's part of it that wasn't there before. where we are at elementary school, asking kids, about to involve them in the process.
Right.
And to the level that elementary school kids can. That's kind of some of the best part of the conversation I feel like we have at the IEP meetings is hearing what they say about what they want to learn about and, goals they have themselves. So
They're actually very good at reflecting on
Yeah.
their strengths and areas of growth. So that, I agree, that's been a nice
that's
addition.
my feedback.
As with young kids, you get absolute honesty all
Yes,
the time.
So these are our grant summaries for this year. So the entitlement grants are 240 and 262. 240 is our special education grant for IDEA, and then 262 is our preschool. About the same. I think 240 went down minimally, and then the 262 went up minimally. So it was pretty much a wash between the two. And then they are in the process of launching a 274 grant this week. It hasn't been posted yet, but it should be posted by midweek. It's about $10,000. And that is a special grant for implementation of the new IEP. So last year we got a grant under 274 for about 18.5. And that was to implement the new IEP and some of our supports around that implementation. This year, they did a little bit different with the funding. It was based on the number of IEPs you had in the district, and it was chunked. So up until this many, you got 5,000, up till this many, you got 10,000, and it kind of went from there. So we fell in the 10,000 amount. So I'll be writing that one this week, and then that'll go towards some of our work, partnering with families around the new IEP. Questions about grants?
I hate to ask, but no,
No, go ahead.
no. You don't have to give me a long answer to this. Is there any internal concern that these go away?
No.
Great.
The 274, yes. So that's one that we haven't had probably. They used to run it for like transitional stuff probably about 10 years ago, and then it started to fade out. So that was one that just came back within the last couple of years for some of these special things. So the 274 is one that we had, then it went away, and then it came back. That one's really contingent on extra funding when they find it for certain special circumstance. But the other two, I don't have concerns about it. Jay, do you?
Me?
Yeah.
Not right now,
Yeah.
tell you in 4 months.
Yeah,
I mean, typically we get an amended amount, to be honest.
yeah, I think I was asking my question. We're going to move on.
Okay. So trends, strengths, growth areas. So if we look, we've had some significant investments in therapeutic supports over the last couple of years, which have been helpful. We've seen our pre-K enrollment continue to increase. And every year we kind of talk about expanding our pre-K opportunities and what we can do to make sure that we're ready. I would say that the pre-K numbers are probably the hardest ones to predict because we don't have a lot of longitudinal data, and we don't get anything from early intervention until about 6 months prior to the student turning 3. And then on top of that, we have parent referrals and a plethora of others. So I think pre-K is probably, you hear me talk about this every year, the most variable number that we play with because we just don't know where it's going to end up. And typically around this time every year, we are seeing numbers high. So as of right now, we don't have any room at Memorial. So any new kids coming in for pre-K eligibility are being tested and put in classes at Clough because the capacity is already maxed out at Memorial. So that's probably our biggest growth area that we continue to look at. And then out of district transportation costs have pretty much, they've remained relatively stable. Knock on wood. Sam, if you want to go to the next slide, this is the chart. Nope. Yep. This is the chart I show you every year just to kind of give you historical data on what we're looking at as far as out of district. As I've said before, once students are out of district, we don't have control over costs. So when tuition goes up, we have to pay the rate. When transportation goes up, we have to pay the rate. So the best way for us to manage our costs in this area is to create programming in district. So that's kind of what we've done. So if you look at this, this is just a historical summary, starting in FY19 up till the current. You'll see this year we had a little increase. So we had a couple of students, we had some movement at the beginning of this year. And then we also had a student move from day to residential because of a homeless concern. So those were things that, unfortunately are not within our control. But other than that, we're looking pretty stable. We have 2 students graduating out this year. We have 1 aging out. So that'll put us down a few students for next year.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Jim, what do you think the right word is here, but offset is based on investments and programs that we've made? So.
I know you guys love this. Sean asked me this all the
Well,
time
but,
too.
but let me, if we went back to, I don't need a, I mean, I'm not trying to make it complicated.
No, that's okay.
But if you go back to, I just can't quite see it, but if you go back 5 years ago, it looked
Yeah.
like we were in the 30s with the number of students. So we've made, if you had the programs back then that we have today, would that number have been 20? Or let me say it differently, if we didn't invest in the programs, today you've got 16 children.
Right.
Would that actually have been 25?
You're asking for my professional opinion?
No, it's just
So I would say, yeah, so I would say yes. I mean, honestly, if you look at historical information across our area, right? And if you look at if you talk to other school committees, I'm sure you know that their biggest indicator of being in a position where they can't fund a budget is special education costs, right? And transportation. So I do think that if we didn't do the things that we do and put things in place the way we put things in place and thoughtfully, and again, I always say this, it's not about the money piece for me too. It's about kids do better in their communities,
Absolutely.
right? So having those connections, having kids come back. I mean, we've had several kids come back because we've allowed them to participate in after school activities, right? So they've done a few sports and then they want to come back and they want to regain and come back into the Nipmuc community or the Misco community. So I think it's being flexible, one, it's being thoughtful, it's meeting needs and being, accommodating, right? Because once you're out, it's a really big thing about building trust with families. That's really what it comes down to. So how can I build a trustful relationship with you so that when they come back in, they're just going to be as successful as they were when they were out. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. We don't have to get up, but
Yeah.
like if you were to say, hey, listen, over the last 5 years, we've made investments and that's probably kept
Right.
half a dozen kids to stay in, that in previous generation, we would have had to send out because we didn't have the facilities and the capabilities to service.
Yeah, I think you would have probably seen our numbers stay around 30, 35 or 40. And I'm going to be honest, and Carrie, you probably know this too, after the pandemic, numbers went through the roof.
Sure.
So I would have seen, like, if we were at the 30s prior to the pandemic, I would say after the pandemic, 90% of your districts probably saw their out of district costs go up and the number of students go out, right? Because they couldn't rebound. So I would say 35 plus another 5 to 7 based on the dynamics of the COVID pandemic, you would have probably been close to 40.
It would be enough, it would be a good thing. We did have, back when Joe was superintendent, we did have an analysis of every area, let's call it, department within the school, what their expenses were. And special ed was a gigantic expense. I mean, it's very large as a percentage of the whole school. I think it's about 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be a good idea to do something similar with special education to see what expenses is a percentage of the overall cost of the school district, just to see what the budget is, see what the comparison is. Because I think we're embedding efficiencies, especially around transportation, that we wouldn't have gotten. So I would be interested to see that. That'd be kind of cool to see.
Do you remember when that was done? No?
It was 2 years before Joe left. Is that correct? Maureen, do you remember that?
Maybe 2018, 19 maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Jen, off the top of your head, I know that we've done a lot of investment in the social emotional support services. What other programs do you think have been, the investment of what other programs do you think has been responsible?
Yeah, so
Speak on that.
oh, go ahead.
I'm okay thinking on that.
Okay.
In particular around BCBA support.
Okay.
and that kind of stuff, if that's kind of what you're looking for.
Well, I'm also wondering,
like
like
frantically
reading
taking notes
services,
over
like
here.
are we losing less students to Carroll and some of these other specialized schools?
We are
Yeah.
because we're doing a better job with the data, right, and the instruction. And I think we're using the information to make decisions instead of just a warm feeling. So that's changed. We've changed some of our electives, like our first couple of years, we changed the electives to just being an academic support to being essentials of literacy, executive functioning, transition course. So really focusing on skills rather than just a kind of catch-all academic support program. That's been helpful. We've expanded the flexibility. So we have students accessing different programming. We've kind of lost the name. So instead of saying, STAR students, we're saying students that receive supports from STAR because they may be getting supports from inclusion as well, right? So modeling, breaking down kind of those walls and having students access different components of what we offer is really what's kind of made the difference, I think, right? In training, I mean, we spent a lot of time training staff too, so that we do have the capacity internally. So when there's something that comes up, we have teachers that are trained in Linda Moon Bell and all these other reading instructions. We have BCBAs. So the BCBAs, as you know, are new. Those have come across in the last 3 or 4 years as well. School psychologists in the building, right? So those school psychologists now are part of our consultation, right? So it's not just a referral, it's they're able to go in and do an observation. Hey, I have a student, right? I need some advice. So they're able to go in. So a lot of our related services too have been brought in. So we have an SLP in every building. We have OT and PT. So now it's not just someone coming in, doing a service for an hour and then leaving. They're embedded in our community and they're able to go in, and we have a lot of them like co-treating or offering advice and strategies to our general ed teachers. So that all adds value, right? So. Anything else?
So yeah, I think one of the things that I think Eric was trying to get at is creating the new programs and the better practices has allowed us to bring the numbers down for out of district placements. But we've obviously spent some more money to do that. Are we getting the efficiency of the money? And then also, are we better able to control our budget with respect to special ed?
I would say yes.
So that's.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, if you just look at the bottom column there, right above the total number of students, it's 3.6 million, 3.4 million, 3.4 million, 3.5 million, 3.4 million. It's flat. Yes, the number of students comes down.
Yeah.
That number of students had stayed flat. That go to the
Right.
I think it kind of felt some back and forth that Sean, when he was talking about the analysis to me from a few years ago. And my gut says it doesn't have to be complicated, right? I think it's literally 4 numbers per year. It's total budget. I think it's internal services, external services, and I think you used the word co-services.
Yeah.
And if you had those 4 numbers for like 8 years and you plotted it, my gut says it's going to tell a really good story. It'd be very easy to represent it at that point. And it's just those 4 numbers.
Right.
And you basically what you're saying, you invest in co-services, you invest in internal services, external costs, it stays flat.
Right.
Versus number of serviced individuals. Yeah, I would love to see that data.
And
This is a big deal too.
And I think at this point, we only contract with maybe 2 providers for a handful of hours. So that's, again, a big piece of it, right? Because you can access an OT without an $85 an hour bill, right? Because they're on staff. So someone can go in, and if a teacher's struggling, hey, I noticed the writing isn't working, right? Can the OT come in and give me some suggestions, right? So not only is that helping the student and the classroom teacher, it's also preventing a referral, right? To then turn into special ed when it's really not probably special ed. It's probably just an instructional practice we need to clean up. So.
But that view, again, my favorite view I keep looking for someday, we're going to see the grades and how much we spend on applications. But I think they help a ton as we're starting to get into budget planning. Maybe they don't go into budget books, maybe they do, but some of these things are just going to pop and they become very good stories to tell.
Yep. I agree. That's a good one right there.
All right, perfect. Any other comments or questions? Okay. And then the last one is my request. So keep the good momentum going. So we have we're proposing a little shift in pre-K. So as you know, pre-K has been something that we've gone back and forth with several times. A couple of years ago, you approved a 3rd teacher for us mid-year, which was great. Then we didn't have the numbers that year. So we looked again this year. Again, currently Memorial is maxed out, right? So just so you understand, when we say maxed out, there has to be so many general ed students to so many special education students, and that ratio has to stay, ideally 60-40, sometimes 50-50, right? But other than that, that's kind of where we have to be. So at this point, Memorial pre-K is maxed out. Any students that are coming in would come in through PLUS and then be evaluated and attend CLUF if they're found eligible, just because of the sheer logistics of it. So when we look at that, we also look at EI referrals. We get about a 6-month window, give or take, from our EI partners, which is early intervention. So spring from now until June, right now we have 10 students on the radar to be evaluated. Okay. And those are turning 3. And then fall, which they consider July and August, because that's when they would start. We have 6 in the pipeline. So that's a lot of students, on top of anyone coming in that are not part of the EI referral process. So in meeting with the elementary principals, we looked, and Maureen and Jay, trying to figure out how we manage this, right? So one of the things that we have now is we have to send students to another community school. So that's never what we want to do. So the first thing we talked about is logistically, would it make sense to put our pre-K in one location? So we decided that that is the best model for us next year, to move our pre-K to one building. So we're still working out all the details on that. We're having ongoing conversations, but we are looking, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to consolidate to one building next year for our pre-K students. This would allow them to share resources, work together, do some groupings, and help us kind of manage the class sizes a little bit better. The second piece that we're looking at, just because of sheer volume, is adding a 3rd teacher. So when we added the 3rd teacher last year to Memorial, we added it under the same model that we currently have, which is 3-year-olds in the morning and 4-year-olds in the afternoon. What we're finding now is there's a pretty high population of students that either, 1, missed the cutoff for kindergarten, turning 5, or 2, they're being found eligible for early intervention at a point where they end up 3 years in pre-K because of when they turn. So they might end up in one of the 2 classes, depending on when they turn 3 and 4, 2 years in a row. So that's not really helpful either if they're repeating that same curriculum that they're doing either in the 3-year-old program or the 4-year-old program. So in thinking about how we could structure that 3rd classroom, if we were, lucky enough to get approval for this position, we would then think about doing a turning 5 classroom, which would be a full day model. So it would be our students who turn 5 after the cutoff, and it would also be any students who potentially would be in a 3 or 4 classroom twice because of where they turned 3 in the process. And that would be a full day program. It would also help us increase the capacity of some of our special education students, because come the spring, if we wanted to kind of lengthen their day from a half to a full to get them ready for kindergarten, we would have that option in-house for that full day classroom. So any questions on that?
I'll give you a couple comments.
Yeah.
I think I'll go in reverse order. I think your investment request, I get it. In some ways, we almost don't have a choice, right? If you've got students who need services, and it's a mandate, right?
Yeah.
And so I assume that's going to be something we have to look at very seriously. I struggle big time with bringing the pre-K together in one town, regardless of which town it is.
Okay.
As a parent who went through it with 2 kids, your children end up in the elementary school for 7 years, and it's an awesome spot, but it's a community.
Yeah.
And I got to say, if we live on one side of Mendon, if we were hauling all the way to Memorial, I'm pretty sure we would have actually gone to one of the other centers in town, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's an awesome benefit to parents who can use it, but it is a little bit of a competitive business, and there's lots of other offerings out there that people can look at. And today we're talking about moving 5 or 6 kids that have to drive from Upton to Mendon.
Yep.
If you move everybody to one town, now you're talking about 20 or 30 kids being disrupted rather than just 5 or 6. I understand there's some economies of scale and you get some pros and mix this, all that, but as a parent, I'm not sure we would have driven our 3-year-old 20 minutes when we used to just drive 5 or 6 minutes.
Right.
And so I don't know, I assume we're gonna need to vote on that, but I would be very, very concerned with doing that. And I think you could actually lose enrollment.
Okay.
I also agree with that, but I do remember being told that there was the option for like full day pre-K too.
For the 5,
Something like
for the
that,
turning 5 class.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that might impact things a little bit. But so right now, if a pre-K kid has to go to CLUF and they live in Upton, are they CLUF for their whole elementary career, or do they go back to Memorial in first grade.
No, because what happens is the 3-year-old class rolls into the 4-year-old class. So if there's no openings for the 3-year-old, when they go into the 4-year-old program, there's not gonna be any
But in
openings.
kindergarten, they would go back.
In kindergarten, they would go back.
Right.
Yeah, but for the pre-K, no. Yeah, they would be. Yeah. And we've teetered back and forth with this for like the last 3 or 4 years, because it's kind of gone up and down. This is not the first time Memorial's been at capacity. They were 2 years ago as well. So, yeah, I mean, we're just trying to figure out long-term, like what that looks like, right? So we went out, we did some research. A lot of towns have like an early learning center. So they have everything together. Sometimes they house it in the high school. So the high school would have the capacity to do like an early childhood elective and work with the pre-K downstairs. We didn't really have too many options based on the facilities piece without causing additional costs because of the upgrade to the facilities. So we really just looked at the 2 elementary because that was the most feasible with our current facilities the way they were.
I mean, just,
I understand,
But
yeah.
I'll just, the last comment I'll make, I don't have to beat that horse here, but if you look at Mendon-Upton, they're funky towns geographically.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody who lives on the West Upton border and drives the clock.
Right.
Versus you have somebody who lives on the Northbridge Blackstone border and drives to Memorial, these programs are only, 3 hours, 2 hours and 45?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah.
You get a parent, not exaggerating, spend 2 hours a day in the car.
Right.
30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and then doing that again. So I don't think parents are gonna spend 2 hours a day in the car for a 2.5 hour program for their kids.
Yeah, okay.
That's it.
Any other questions?
Never been shy with mine.
No, it's fine. Do you want to hear the financial piece or no?
Sure.
So the I don't know, it's up to you guys. So the financial piece, if we add the full day program, looking at a 9-7 split, so 9 peers, 7 students with special needs, adding that classroom would be approximately $7,500, give or take, depending on what we approve the rate at. And that would be about 76.5 in revenue. So adding the new teacher would be offset by the money we're going to generate from that classroom.
With the assumption that you're not gonna have any losses with distance to travel.
Correct.
I just think you gotta factor some of this. But,
Cool. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jen.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, I think next up, we've got the elementary schools.
Gotta be sure that Jen went first. You're welcome.
Now we're just warmed up.
Thought you might be fatiguing by now.
Okay. Sure. I'm Liz Garden, principal of Clough, joined by Wendy Bell, principal of Memorial, and we are going to walk you through our budget presentation. I don't think we have to go over the development cycle because I think you know it. I'm just going to just share this quote. AJ Giuliani is a professor and he writes a blog that I definitely follow, but this stuck out for me thinking about meaningful and relevant experiences that we're trying to do at all levels. So, we know what happens when kids can tap into relevancy and curiosity and solve problems. We know what happens when students get to work on challenges that are meaningful. We know what happens when learners dive into an authentic curriculum and project-based learning experiences. We know what happens when kids care about their learning because we know what happens when we care about our learning. And I just felt that certainly summed up a lot of what we've been spending a lot of time talking about and what we are trying to do at the elementary school.
And again, this is probably a familiar slide to you. I think a key piece at the elementary level that's a little bit different than the middle and high school is the fact that we are working across 2 towns, we try to create like mirror image experiences for students between both of the schools. So Liz and I work very closely when designing our budgets to make sure that, you know, if we're looking at something that we want to add in, that we're talking and collaborating together. So that's probably the only kind of difference that you see here compared to the middle and high school. So we're going to jump right in and kind of talk a little bit about some of the highlights. I just want to start by just thanking the committee for supporting us over the past few years with some of the investments that we've made in our students, both through special education as well as honestly at Memorial class size. I hope to speak a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. But I can just kind of highlight, and this is Carrie, you had kind of asked a little bit about investments. I would say that one of the biggest investments that we've made is hiring full-time BCBAs in this district. When I arrived here, we used contractors that were kind of in and out. And Jen kind of touched on this, that opportunity to provide in the moment consultation across the school is really important. Recently, we just had a new BCBA start, and seeing the work that they do with students, those out of district numbers would not be as low as they are if we didn't have that skilled expert working in our schools. We have several students at Memorial that I could predict could be out of district if we didn't have the right programming in place for them. So I'm really grateful for the BCBAs. They've also worked really hard to train, the BCBAs for training our ABA staff, working really closely with them, making sure that they're up to date with, you know, data collection and interventions for students and running programs for students, but also keeping us up to date with our safety care training and all of that. Our BCBAs in district have been providing in-house training for multiple staff members, not just our ABA staff. So I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything because I can't speak highly enough about that. Just that one position, I really think you get so much bang for your buck. They're just experts across the board.
Just for our viewers at home, BCBA is?
Or certified behavior analyst.
Yes.
Highly qualified position too. I mean, that it takes a lot of training and it's a difficult certification to achieve. So
I think I touched on everything I wanted to share there. I do think, as Jen said, I just want to reiterate that, and this is something I believe at my core, is that kids do better in their own community. And if we can find the right ways to support children, like keeping them in their community, just their opportunity to grow is just so much more. And I think between the programs that we have at Memorial for, you know, students with, you know, they've received STAR services. We don't call them in the STAR program anymore. And then the therapeutic supports at Clough, I think it's a nice balance to be able to provide that blanket of support for students. So I spoke a lot on that, but that's one that I feel very strongly has been just such a huge piece. I also will just mention the class size, the effort that's been put into trying to make sure that our early elementary students in particular are learning in class sizes that will really optimize their learning and growth, especially with reading development. I have one little anecdote that I wanted to share. I was looking at the numbers and thinking about the first time that I came here and asked for an additional teacher. It's when our current 3rd grade class was in 1st grade. They were in class sizes in kindergarten. I want to say it was 24, 25, which, as we all know, for kindergarten, that's just a lot of kids. And we added a teacher when they entered 1st grade, and I need to find my data here. The 3rd graders, they're 3rd graders now, and their mid-year iReady reading scores, I just cannot speak highly enough about like their scores. 84% of our students in grade 3 right now are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations in reading, which is not something we typically see. Now, hopefully MCAS scores mirror that, but we only have 2% of our students that are 2+ grade levels behind in grade 3. So I think that's a really big accomplishment, and it's because of the investment that was made in teaching staff.
And I will jump in to talk about the therapeutic supports. As you know, we created this support plan last year at Clough, where we have a school social worker working with a special education teacher. And like Wendy said, some of these students, certainly if we couldn't intervene as early as we have been able to, could end up having to go out of district. But I'm super proud. It just happens to be that all of the students we have in this model right now are all in our 3rd grade. But they are having such success this year. And these are kids with some very significant trauma that is impacting all aspects of their life. But what we've been able to do by providing them regular counseling in school, also working on the wraparound services that we're working with their families. That's probably one of my favorite parts about this model is that every other week, our therapeutic team has care team meetings with the parents. And just, I feel like that has helped tremendously to increase their success rate. And we're continuing to strengthen that model. And, you know, I think it's later on, but I mean, we are also adding a different layer of the Bright partnership, which has been at the middle school and high school level. So I'll get into that more later. But, and then, you know, the Spanish immersion program, I think we can definitely talk about how great that model has been at both of our schools. I just shared at our evening conference, concert last week. I wanted to share this little story that I think it's kind of neat to see that our music teacher right now, who is a long-term sub, is a NIPMUC Spanish immersion graduate. And she was a CLUF student. And so she has come back full circle and is now an amazing music teacher. And added bonus, she's been a translator. She has been helpful with our Spanish immersion program as well. And so it's just like, talk about a major return on investment. We are benefiting from her being part of our school this year. So that's been fun to see.
Some of the,
What grades for SI do you have at CLUF right now?
At CLUF, we have kindergarten, 1st grade, and 3rd grade. And so next year we will have kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 4th grade.
And that 3rd grade class will be at Memorial.
Yes.
We have both strands there. The next couple of bullets are more like materials that we've invested in over the past few years. Both schools have benefited for being able to kind of beef up our decodable readers, which for those of you who are not familiar, they are more controlled texts that kind of mirror the phonics patterns that students are learning in their classroom. Most of the words are easily decodable to whatever level the student's at, as well as additional supplemental reading materials, including foundations, which was introduced, I think this is our 3rd year of foundations. And this year we've expanded foundations into 3rd grade, which I felt validated at our PD session 2 weeks ago, because she spoke about, our presenter came to us to speak to us about the science of reading. And she really talked about like word morphology and what
Vocabulary.
yeah, like and all of that is what the 3rd grade foundations really digs into. So our kids are getting the early childhood foundations, and then they're expanding everything in 3rd grade. And really, foundations is meant to be a program that runs K-3 anyway. So it was a nice rollout to see, and the kids that are in 3rd grade have had foundations since 1st grade, so they were kind of ready for it. So that was a nice addition as well. Do we talk about Bridges?
Yeah, so Bridges, I mean, you know, we continue to see the added benefits of the curriculum itself, but also we both added concept, I always forget the term, the concept quest, which is really like an enrichment for 2nd through 4th grade. And I know my teachers have been really excited about it. I'm sure Wendy's have as well, that we've been able to, you know, expand on kids that have already maybe mastered a certain concept and take them a little bit further. So that's been great. And then of course, our iReady, both the assessment package that we utilize, where we beginning, middle of the year and end of the year use that diagnostic, but then we also have as part of iReady, which is called the My Path, where it's personalized learning for students. And I know we have targeted really sort of kids that are on the cusp of maybe not so much intense intervention that they need, but really trying to use this personalized learning to be able to move them. And it's nice because it is individualized. It's based off of their diagnostic and in both math or ELA. And we can track and see their progress as they're moving through those personalized plans, which has been great. I know we also had on here just, we're grateful to our PTOs. We both have PTO that support anything that we pretty much come to them with. I know mine, I'm always like, so what if we were to bring this in? And so, we have had at Clough some things like we had a really great bullying SEL program at the beginning of the year, and that the PTO funded. We're bringing in another author. They have funded several authors. Our field trips, they're always willing to support us and some of those enrichment activities.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I also feel like our PTO has done a lot for facilities improvements as well. The outdoor classroom at Memorial is beautiful and it gets used frequently during, in particular, the nicer weather months. They just purchased water bottle filling stations to replace all of our water fountains in our school, which they started going in this week. And so the kids are all excited because they're seeing them pop up. And we are in the works of trying to purchase a new sign. Those of you who drive by Memorial may have noticed it is not being used this year because it is a huge hazard. The door won't stay open and we've had people like get smashed by it when they were trying to change the letters for the sign. So we're looking to make improvements with that as well. And the PTO is earmarked money. They're just trying to figure out the logistics of what type of sign. So yeah, those are like some of the highlights of some of the investments over the past couple of years that have really made an impact. Any questions on this? Sorry, talking a lot.
All right. So you want to talk about?
Sure. All right, some things that we've reduced or reallocated over the last couple of years to try to become a little bit more efficient. The first thing was we did hire an additional preschool teacher 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago. She was a special educator, a severe special educator, and just based on enrollment and whatnot, we were struggling with where we could save some money. And so that was one of the positions that we reduced. You want to talk about?
Yeah, we had a special education teacher that went out on maternity leave last year, and we did not fill that position. She chose to not return, and we kind of readjusted our caseloads with our special education teachers. And then we also both, obviously, it's been great having the new lighting. It's much brighter in the school. And then I know you talked about the BCBA reallocation a little bit. And then something that's really exciting, we feel like, is that we were able to partner with WELL, which is the Written Expressive Language Lab, that collaborative. And we have researchers working with both of our schools in explicit writing instruction. We have had already several PD sessions. We have pretty much once a month, we have Zoom sessions with some of the researchers with our kindergarten and first grade teams. And then we'll kind of be expanding it, but they are collecting writing samples. They are collecting data. They're teaching our teachers specific strategies. And we have this partnership for 3 years. And the best part is it is free. So it's really amazing. And we have a book that one of the researchers wrote. And so we're using that as a jumping off point with our teachers. They're very happy to have some very specific professional development related to writing.
The last bullet is the investments that we've made in Project Lead the Way at the elementary level, which is expanding pretty rapidly across both of our buildings. We invested in training both of our tech teachers to become lead trainers for Project Lead the Way, so we can do all of the training. You have to have to be trained before you can teach their units and before you can have access to their curriculum. So we don't have to send anybody out to get trained. We can train in-house. So we've been able to kind of schedule those at our convenience. Memorial got a little bit of a head start over Clough, just because Katie Dutton got trained quickly to start. She was super excited about it, got herself trained and started training our staff. So at this point, I'm happy to say all of Memorial teachers pre-K through 4 have been trained in Project Lead the Way, and we're about at what, like 50%, a little bit more than 50% at Clough, and that will get finished up in the next,
This
year.
year, hopefully.
And all of our students have the opportunity to participate in at least one Project Lead the Way module each year, and many grades and students are participating in more than that. So, any questions on that?
Some of our grants and partnerships, as we just mentioned, the Project Lead the Way grant, although, and I think that's going to move into an expansion grant where basically, like, we've been doing the training ourselves, so that's taken care of, but ordering more of it, because the modules, there are definitely specific modules that come along with that. So we've been slowly ordering them and sharing them, but that's going to continue. We have at the elementary level, well, at the other levels too, but as part of the, I think it was the SOA grant, we have the instructional partners that have been able to help move the work forward with deeper learning at both schools. As I mentioned, the WELL partnership, which is great because that's completely free. We've continued with the S3 Academy at both of our schools. Last year we had we had students participating and staff in the Summer Acceleration Academy. This year, pretty excited. We have one of our teachers at Clough was part of kind of the creation of the curriculum with investigating history and piloting it. And so now this year we have teachers from Clough and one teacher from Memorial that are part of the investigating history pilot in 3rd and 4th grade. And so they get regular PD throughout the year, and then they are teaching those units.
Lots of primary source,
yes,
lots of writing,
it's a really,
reading analysis. It's really great.
Really great curriculum.
I can speak I'm happy to say we just found out we received a grant from the Upton Cultural Council again for, I think we've gotten it every year since I've been here in Mendon-Upton to support the bringing in of Cheryl Fay to do a presentation this year of Queen Elizabeth, which the kids are really excited about. That's actually happening, I think, in 2 weeks. So.
And then last year in the spring, we were lucky enough to have Carnegie Math tutoring at both of our schools, and we really targeted those students again that were right on the cusp of giving them very specialized tutoring before school, and we found that it was actually very successful.
Specifically, it says that in math.
Yes.
It was math tutoring, and it was like for 12 weeks? 12 weeks, I think, leading up to MCAS. And like Liz said, we targeted students that were scoring like between like 490 and 499 on MCAS, which is at the high end of like progressing towards expectations. And if they had hit that 500, they would have been in the meeting expectations. And looking at the data after, it definitely helped push a few kids up and over the line. So.
Okay. So just some of we think about strengths and areas of growth. As we talked about, it is nice to have our own people training our people for Project Lead the Way. And we have also sent our staff to some of their free conferences this year. The instructional partners, I feel like we both have very strong staff that are in those roles and are helping us to move other teachers forward. We both have worked really hard, I think, with our teams about you really using the data, looking at it, talking about it, planning with it, and taking actionable steps.
And I would just add in that also includes, it's not just the academic data. I know Maureen kind of highlighted the new SEL screener that we've started using, that kind of functions a bit as a check-in on students. The goal is to administer it to all kids once a month, asking them things like, do you feel happy for the youngest kids, you know?
Are you able to follow teacher direction?
Yeah, so it's
You know,
touching base on like some of it
think before
is,
you act.
yes.
That's a big one.
So that data is being collected. We did our first administration, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we plan to do it again in the next month. And we're starting to look for trends in certain students. That gives us quick, easy, raw data to like dig in further with, you know, our school counselors or with a team of people if we need to.
And I would also say it connects to, and I know Maureen mentioned this before, but at the high school level, but the whole child reviews, we are also doing those. Those have been really great conversations to have where we're talking about all, you know, all the different domains. Elementary school teachers are very good about talking academics, but, you know, kind of hitting all the other categories has been important. And also really thinking about, from a strengths base, you know, where can we, like, what strength of a certain child can we tap into to help them in some of these other areas? So we have both been doing the whole child reviews in our buildings.
Areas of growth are things that, you know, we are constantly trying to find better opportunities to build partnerships with communities. I think it can be easier at the high school level to figure out how to connect with businesses and connect students. So we're really trying to think about and build a bank of partners that we can have our students connect with, in particular as we, you know, build the deeper learning experiences for students. And then kind of going along with that, but in a different realm, is building also a bank of wraparound services for students. When we do our whole child reviews, like as Liz said, we really are able to identify interventions and supports, in particular for the academics. It's when we get to how might we support this family, trying to figure out what resources we have in this community and close by surrounding communities that we can partner families with. That's an area that we definitely are continuing to grow in. And then the last one, I kind of worked from the bottom up, I'm sorry. Really thinking about how we can expand deeper learning opportunities in each grade level. And I know that's something that we're doing across the district. Our instructional partners at Memorial kind of looked at the high school's authenticity protocol and tried to model a second protocol focused on student agency, as that's kind of been our focus this year, is how do we bring more student agency and voice into the elementary classroom. Also at Clough, they're working on as a school reflection and revision, which we're also doing in a smaller piece at Memorial. So we're kind of dabbling in different things and having teachers kind of take a look at their units with a little bit of a different lens to see if there's a way that they can level it up in one of the areas of deeper learning. So we're taking steps, but definitely have a long way to go with that.
And looking forward to next week where we have Inspired Learning Day coming up at those schools where they plan some really, I think, really great sessions that are sometimes bringing in community people and also definitely trying to dive in deeper with the kids in different areas with some authentic experiences. So, okay. Okay, well, it was already discussed a little bit about, Jen shared about the preschool program and kind of what we have struggled with sort of every other year. And, you know, we really looked at both of our buildings about what would make the most sense. And right now we are definitely proposing to move the preschool program to Clough. We have more space there. I hear what you say, Eric. I have been an early childhood administrator. That's how I started my career. So I'm used to kind of being in like a model where it's in the middle school or it's in the high school, and you have a lot of opportunity to expand. You know, we're definitely not ready for that here. I mean, not to say that someday it would be amazing, but in the immediate, it's we looked at it more from you know, the perspective of the kids and like what we're able to offer them, and also the teachers as well. You know, being able to have them be together to collaborate. I would also say, I hear what you're saying, that like what parent is going to want to like go to one area or the other. But as a parent who had kids in preschool, you know, there is a definite benefit cost savings for parents to do public preschool. And we know that is a risk that some parents might choose to not send their kids. But I think that kind of the pros of doing this, combining this model for right now outweigh that. And I don't know, I think we might be surprised. I do know, I think, I can't remember if it was mentioned. Also remember though, that our special education students, they would have transportation. So that is something that would automatically happen. It is, yep, that the reality is that there would be an added transition for kids where they might be at a preschool in one building and then they're transitioning to another building, which happens throughout their career, I feel like, unfortunately, but
I think, thinking about it from the perspective of our students, the way that the model is now doesn't allow for any type of balance in a classroom. So, you know, we get what we get and they all go into one room. And so the opportunity to have two classrooms and say, okay, we have, you know, this student and this student, we're going to put one in this room and one in this room. That to us, and just being, you know, in a school where I see it every day and, you know, we don't know what's coming in, right? We don't know who's aging in until 6 months. And even then you don't really know them until they're in the building. And it quickly can become a lot in one classroom. So I think having the opportunity to be able to move the kids into different classrooms, I think is a huge benefit. And also just from the perspective of the two classroom teachers, you know, in conversations with them, the idea that they'd have a partner to actually work with and have a team. I think that was what my preschool teacher said. You mean I might have a team? I think that was a real positive. So definitely hear you. And we may lose some families that may have been thinking about joining preschool, but now they're like, oh, I live on, you know, Crockett Road in Upton, almost in Milford, and it would take me way too long to get to Puff, but I don't know.
yeah. And I think that, like, I know Jen spoke to also the potential of like having a full day program. Yeah, you know, I think we look at it as like kind of there's like layers of this. The first one is to really kind of fix the issue that we sort of alternate every other year with of bringing the program into one space. And then I think the next thing is to like consider, you know, a full day, because that's obviously advantageous too. Okay.
The second request, I'm putting a little caveat on this that we are still in the early stages of enrollment into kindergarten at Memorial. And I tried to pull together the numbers to help you all better understand. We've got some pockets where we have 3 sections of English and then pockets now where we have 4 sections of English. One of our 3 section classes is our current 4th grade. They're in classes right now of about 25. We made the decision last year that extra class was going to go to kindergarten instead of that class, just because they've always been in those larger classes. And I think a 4th grade class can handle it better than a kindergarten class. So that class is aging out, but the class behind them moving into 4th grade will need 4 sections because they're currently in 4 sections and they're at about 20 in a class right now, which is wonderful. Our 2nd grade class next year will be back down to 3. So the thought there was that a 2nd grade position would shift to 4th grade. So that position would move from our 4 sections of 2nd into the 4th grade where we need 4 because grade 2 only needs 3. 1st grade next year will need 4 sections because our current kindergarten class is about up to 20 in a class now, which is interesting because they started last summer when I started. They were at 16 and 17 and I was like, oh, that's really low. But they've quickly added. We had several enrollments towards the end of August, and then there's just been a steady increase throughout the year. So they're at like good numbers now to move into 4 classes again next year. So the big question mark for me is, what will kindergarten look like this coming year? Will it be like 2 years ago where we had, I think, 81 total children, or will it be like this year where we had closer to 100? if it's similar to this year, we would want to keep 4 sections of kindergarten. If it's not, I would shift one of the kindergarten teachers to first grade and we would go back to 3. So that's there as a placeholder, because I don't know what's going to happen. I asked my administrative assistant to tell me how many parents have expressed interest and put their name on the list. We're up to about 45 families, which is a little bit lower than last year at this point. So we'll see how the next couple of months go.
And I think I mentioned this before, but we, at Clough next year, we will need another Spanish immersion teacher, because that we will have a kindergarten class, that will continue. That kindergarten class moves to first grade, the first grade class moves to second, and then my third grade class moves to fourth. So we have 2 of our teachers that have signed 2-year extensions that will be staying, which is great. But we will need 1 more teacher added on.
And then the final piece, we didn't put this school specific because a lot of it truly will depend on where preschool lands. That's where the addition of ABA technicians tend to come in. Once students are in our program, by the time they get to the 4-year-old program, it's evident what type of additional supports they may need. So we put that in as a placeholder, just based on numbers and the number of students that are aging out of elementary school. I have 1 student that's aging out and going to the middle school. Everybody else is staying, and then based on what we know is coming in. Any questions?
And then just, some of this, we talked about the current year. You can see we have in there the short term, that pre-K, severe needs teacher would be like a full day teacher that we're talking about. I think you're going to be hearing from technology on a different night, and we'll talk about, you'll learn about smart boards there, but and then we both, someday in the distant future,
We're like, I think we're 4 or 5 years behind NIPMUC.
but we're just putting
As
it out
far
there.
as, I think we're at 20 years for
Yeah.
our roofs. So just putting it out there is like, don't forget about us in 5 years. That our roofs are definitely nearing the end of life.
We certainly have it on the
Yeah.
capital planning and all that. Are you guys, just more curiosity question, right? NIPMUC's got, you go in the band room and you run between all the buckets and stuff like that. Are you guys having a lot of leaks?
Yeah. We have leaks, in particular in the wing closest to like our gym leaks, and the wing down by our gym, there's definite leaks.
Our
yes.
gym, it's their gym. I have 1 classroom upstairs that's a continual issue. And then our library, 2 sides of the library, those are the main spots.
That sucks.
We're still at the use the bucket space.
Yeah.
So it's.
And then we just have
Just some cute pictures of kids.
kids. Yeah.
That's my favorite slide.
The picture on the upper left is my all-time most favorite picture ever.
And when I first saw that, I thought looking first to this now.
Yeah. I would have liked for you to have seen this before I put the paintbrushes in his hand. So, he was having a ball. It was great.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go. Come on up.
Would offer you guys any coffee, but I know budget presentations are the only caffeine you might need at this time, so.
That's what I call them every year, caffeine.
Right, just.
That's what I should do next year, instead of pads of paper.
Caffeine, the budget night.
Right? Happy school board appreciation during budget season.
So thank you. We can actually kind of skip
All the way-
Also,
all the
we
way to
have-
the axe slide?
Yeah. Go to the cute kids, go to the cute kids,
Thank
cue
you
them up.
for your support. So in thinking about my quote, to start this, I know we talked about just the idea that the budget is about our values. And so even as we go through our budget presentation, kind of thinking, how does it support our strategic plan? How does it support what is the most valuable piece to us, which is our students? So the students are at the center of the budget decisions that we're making, to ensure that they have the best education possible in Mendon-Upton. So again, our development process is very similar to what you've seen, probably a little bit more similar to NIMUX in the sense that, we begin by putting out to our teachers and within departments to think about what they need. As Nick and I are sitting down together, and then we bring all that together and then to the district. So that's that kind of in between part of ours. So our first place to talk about return on investments, again, these are tied to some of the strategic priorities. So that can, continuing to increase our opportunities for PBL, Project Lead the Way, to support applied learning and deeper learning opportunities for our students. In terms of high quality curriculum and instruction, we have increased our computer science offering to really align with NIPUC to really try to promote that. And we've also been able to bring in high quality curriculum resources in our 5th grade. We're in a review cycle looking at our 6th through 8th this year, but starting this year, we were able to bring that in for our 5th grade, which was a huge support this year. We are increasing our therapeutic supports through our Bridge program classroom and professional learning and collaboration, particularly in the areas of trauma-informed practices, UDL, and our behavior and culture work. So really supporting our students and how do we support our students across a number of different spaces. And then lastly, in terms of community support, thinking about upgrades to our building. So these are places like new flooring in classrooms. That means carpet in some. We were able to put tile in our science classrooms, which is exciting for me as a former science teacher to have tiled classrooms in terms of in there, and that's been a wonderful addition this year. And then just thinking about our cafeteria and the support that we've had for soundproofing or sound paneling to dampen the sound, or we have a very echoey cafeteria. We have a lot of kids in a small space. So those panels have made a difference for us, and we look to hopefully add some more. And then our partnership with We Care MISCO, where the district and We Care partnered together to make some upgrades to our bathrooms and to our library, which was, get to see pictures of that at the very beginning of the year. And we're seeing our library used again and starting to have classes come down, which is wonderful. Teachers bringing their kids to check out books. We're starting to upgrade some of our collection. We have a new self-checkout. Thank you, Sam O'Neill, who's done a lot of troubleshooting to make that happen. And so that's really a positive for our school. And then the last one, it seems like a small thing, but it's a really big thing actually, in terms of we have upgraded walkie-talkies that we purchased within the last year. So we have more walkie-talkies in our building. So counselors, PE teachers, so they're out on field and they can communicate easily with our main office. Nick and I have walkie-talkies, so that helps in a lot of ways. Number one, the quality of the walkie-talkies we were able to get span our campus, which was huge for communication, clarity. And then also in case of emergency. So just really having those lines of communication when we have a student crisis happening, or in the big picture, like when we're evacuating the building and making sure that our procedure is smooth, we can account for kids and communicate effectively. So that has been an investment in our safety in our building, and we thank you for that. So reallocations and reductions. So over the past few years, we've had a number of reductions at MISCO and reallocating positions. And Nick can talk about some of this as well. And as we've shuffled, the students through, or several teachers as class sizes have moved through our building. But The first I'd like to point out is our average departmental requests for this year are a little bit lower than last year. And that doesn't, I think it just speaks to the thoughtfulness that teachers put into kind of thinking about what they were going to ask for in this year and what they might need. So our requests are a little bit lower than last year overall, like the average. But over the last couple of years in particular, and really the last 4, so even before I was here, we've had a small class moving through MISCO. So our current 8th grade is quite smaller than the other classes that are presently in the building. So there's a discrepancy class-wise of anywhere from like 30-ish to 35. And that's kind of sort of 48 times. So that's changed. And so you can see here a number of the places where there's been a reallocation of a person to this grade from this grade to really support that. And kind of going back to the FY24, Nick, I don't know if you want to speak about some of the reallocations that were happening at that time in the year prior.
Well, when that our current 8th grade class, when they joined in grade 5, we were moving staff around so that this way we were meeting the class size, and all of the other grades had larger class sizes. So now that they're up to 8th grade, we have maintained a class size of around 22, 23, but with 6 teachers. And that's a reduction from 8 teachers. And then we then also saw opportunity to move teachers down to 5th grade, or that position down to a 5th grade position, because we knew about the transition of creating those teams of 2 teachers versus a 5th grade student transitioning between 3 or 4 teachers. So we were trying to support the transition from elementary to middle school, which we've seen a huge improvement on.
And I would like to echo that. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Like just even thinking about the feel of the 5th grade in the building, and 5th grade students moving through the building. So as we were able to kind of really structure their teams appropriately for 5th grade students, and only having 2 teachers whose classrooms are next to each other as they're moving back and forth, last year, the year prior, in years prior to that, kids were moving between 3 to 4 teachers, coming from a self-contained elementary classroom to a larger building where it's new. They're moving between 3 and 4 teachers, and they could be spread out, up a couple of hallways. That was pretty stressful for our 5th graders in that transition. We saw a much smoother transition to school, and I think that's carried into their 5th grade experience. We're also seeing, because of those 2-person teams of teachers, you're really getting to know those 5th graders really well that they're working with. And we see that as a huge investment in, number one, those kids and their experience, but then that carries with them as they move through MISCO. So that was the appropriate thing to do. And then the other, reallocation of that 8th grade teacher was an 8th grade teacher to the 7th grade team. I don't know if you remember last year with that smaller class size in the 7th grade, we had 7 7th grade teachers. And so that meant on one team, everybody was teaching a science course. So, that impacted them, and now they moved to 8th grade. And we chose it for the 8th grade, instead of thinking about them as 2 teams of, 3, to think about them as 1 team of 6. And, that has worked for the 8th grade for this year. But we spend a lot of time on this because it foreshadows some of our asks as we think about that later on. So grant funding, we have a number of grants on here that are shared, throughout the district. I know Cheryl will speak specifically about them when she presents later on. But the Student Opportunities Act grant, Summer Acceleration Academy. So those are ones that support our students in different ways. The Civics grant has supported us with curriculum resources, but also has supported some professional development. So we've benefited from that. And the Genocide grant, again, thinking about stipends for curriculum work. So these are things that we couldn't really do if we didn't have grant funding to supplement some of those other things that help us meet some of those aspirations. 2 specifically,
that are really have impacted our school this year. Nick's going to talk about the youth grant and what that's meant. So.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Misco's rock band. I'm waiting for a band to come out of this class and then dethrone Aerosmith and make Misco on the map again. So Mike Weber is taking the lead in designing a new course. Right now, we're piloting it in the 7th grade. We have about 26 students taking this course last semester, and we have another 26 taking it this semester. And primarily, it's geared for students that aren't actually participating in our rock band, in our band or our chorus, because we offer general music in 5th and 6th grade, but we didn't have a music offering for our 7th and 8th graders. So Mike thought of a cool opportunity. It was kind of like the offspring of a PBL project that he was toying with. So he said, what if I brought in some of the instruments of pop and rock, such as an electrical guitar and bass guitar and drums and keyboard, and I gave him a general understanding of how to use these instruments, and then I paired it with the technological piece of learning GarageBand and Logic Pro, and we're looking forward. We're going to pick a time in the springtime. We're going to bring some current bands and also some fall bands. And I think we might even get a performance for our school committee to see. But we're really excited about how students are getting an opportunity to explore their skill set as a communicator, but also as an innovator in maybe a domain that they hadn't even thought of themselves dabbling in before getting that experience at Misco.
And I'd like to talk about the Applied Learning Leadership Institute, which we have been fortunate enough to be a part of this year, which is through the 1-8 Foundation. NIPMUC was part of it last year, is part of a cohort last year that's continued into this year. We will have the opportunity to extend that grant, for another amount of money into the coming year. And what we've really done with it, Nick and I have been able to work with 2 of our teacher leaders, Britt Kaler and Brenda Webster. And so these are both teachers that have been highly involved in project-based learning and Project Lead the Way, that have kind of rounded out our leadership team with us. And we've had the opportunity to attend a number of different professional learning sessions as we think about how do we want to take the elements of applied learning and maybe focus in on an area, really craft a pilot for our school, and thinking about how we might kind of like dig deeply in a small way into an aspect of that. So we've really chosen to focus on the element of collaboration and discourse, because we felt like that was just an important skill set within the middle school, and it also ties in with a lot of the collaboration and culture work that we're doing. So we're trying to marry these 2 ideas. So that's where we've been focused on, and we're starting to launch our pilot, because that's the phase that all the schools that are part of the cohort are in, is launching our pilot, which is really focused on building students' ability to engage in thoughtful discourse by teaching them some, different, our first phase is we're focused on sentence stems that help them think about, like, when I want to ask a question, when I want to challenge an idea, when I want to build upon somebody's idea, like, how do we build these routines into how we talk in classes? And so they're thinking right now about partnered activities, and when they're collaborating one-to-one. Our next phase of our pilot will look at how they give peer feedback to one another, and use it in building upon those discourse strategies. And our last phase is really thinking about how they have whole class discussions. Again, start to build these skills over time. So in addition to Britt and Brenda, who are part of our teacher pilot of that, we've also pulled in some other members of our faculty. And the idea is kind of refining the practices, and then you kind of build them out across your school. So we're excited about working with the other schools in our cohort and our partner schools, where we get to visit them and see what they're working on. But that's been tremendously impactful for us as a leadership team. We have a lot of things here on our strengths and growth, but we're really just going to focus kind of on bigger themes. So Nick is going to start with deeper learning.
Yeah, and the years that I've presented before, you've heard, yeah, I'm probably known as Mr. PBL by some. And so we've built a strong foundation of teachers that have been trained with project-based learning. And so I think that creates a framework for us to, as a district, engage in deeper learning from the MISCO perspective and, looking at authenticity and agency and self-reflection. Those are all elements of PBL. So the language will transition really nicely. We're talking about continuing to refine our PBL units. Our 7th grade has adopted 2 new math PBL units this year, working with PBL Works. One they just finished recently. They presented like a Shark Tank pitch that was using like principles of linear functions and cost analysis. So something that they would have probably just done some worksheets on, or maybe some standalone examples. They were actually able to flush out a full project presentation and use those principles in an authentic way. They have another one coming up in the springtime where the 7th graders are going to be learning their geometric principles and designing a jewel or a gem. So they'll be using some of their principles of angles and parallel lines. And I got to brush up on my 7th grade math standards, but they'll be covering all the core geometric 7th grade math standards and then designing a gem based on that. And we're hopefully going to be partnering with folks down in the IIC and 3D printing these gems based off student designs. So we're really excited about those pieces, and we're increasing opportunities, whether it is in-house, opportunities for like a self-assessment, self-reflection, feedback tool of looking at our PBL units. What are ways that we can level up different elements of our PBL units, or even a non-PBL unit? How can we look at the opportunity to give critique and feedback within this unit, or embed in more reflection? So we're looking at like that dimmer switch approach of how can we take our current unit and bump it up just a little bit. So we're creating opportunities for staff to collaborate with one another. And I know we're always looking for opportunities. We have hired a bunch of new staff, not only this year, but in previous years that may have missed out on that intensive 3-day PBL training. So we're constantly looking for opportunities within our different networks to create, either train the trainer models or to leverage our partnerships so that newer teachers interested in PBL were able to expand upon that momentum. And as Robin mentioned, our work with Ally allows us to dig a little bit even deeper into student discourse and collaboration, which is a central tenet of PBL.
In the area of high quality curriculum and instruction, I think we have a strong commitment to co-teaching partnerships. So again, you'll see this kind of come up as we think about like how we need to staff our school and how we need to ensure we have a schedule that allows those partnerships. They're good for our special education students and the support that they receive, but they're really good for all students and those partnerships between teachers, and also for teachers in growing their practice, that continuous collaboration, what they do, how they think about how they support students in their classroom. So it's a strength. I think that, just ensuring that we have everything we need to make those partnerships robust and supported are critically important. I think the time and the collaboration to refining curriculum, as we've spent a lot of time and energy over the last couple of years, really ensuring that we're making progress on having our curriculum fully articulated. That takes time and working together. And the use of data to inform changes to that curriculum is an important piece of that. So there's in each of these, there are places where we're strong and places where we're continuing to grow in terms of how we support the experience of kids. I think a last piece is that we are starting to really review our curriculum resources critically, and the 5th grade ELA would be an example of that. The work that we're doing with the ELA Curriculum Council across the district is an example of that, where teachers are coming together and really kind of thinking critically about what does our next resource look like at the middle school level. But as that continues to pull through other content areas, I think is important. And what what we're seeing is that we also have places where teachers are becoming interested in, like we have some units being piloted in investigating history at the middle school, at the 5th grade level. We have at least one open SciEd unit being piloted in 5th grade. We're increasing our Project Lead the Way. So like we're expanding the curriculum opportunities that we have, and then they're tied deeply to our value of deeper learning, that they're connected there. And then just in the area of equity, inclusion, and belonging, again, that continued use of win block is something that we're trying to refine, and certainly as in a place to grow is within our scheduling that we're working on this year, is that we're thinking about like, how do we use win block? How do we provide opportunities for consistent SEL programming within our school for all students across all grades? And how do we utilize our counselors, and how do we build partnerships with our classroom teachers, with our counselors? And so that brings us to the big part, the big ask that we have. So hopefully we've laid the groundwork for this. So the positions that we're actually asking for have been positions that were MISCO positions in the past that have either been reduced over the last number of years or reallocated to other places. So as we said, we talked about, we've had this small class moving through MISCO over the last few years. Next year, that won't be the case. They move on to the high school, and our incoming 5th grade is a large class. And that trend will continue. So the next 2 years, our population of our building overall will increase each year. So at the 8th grade level, as we said, we moved 2 teachers because of the small class size. We could accommodate the same average class size across our building with only 6 teachers at the 8th grade, and we can't do that in the coming year. If we don't add an ELA teacher and a math teacher to that 8th grade team, to round them out with eight teachers like we now have at each grade level. So they are, that will be an important addition as we think about what we need next year. So it's really bringing those positions back now that our population warrants it. The last ask is around special education. And so last year we had.
Sorry, could I just provide just a data point? Without those additional ELA and math teacher, our class size would be 29 in each of the 8th grade classes. If we add a grade 8 teacher for ELA and a grade 8 teacher for math, it'll bring it down to 21. So I think it's just.
Right, that's a good point. And around 21 is about our average class size across all grade levels right now.
So if we weren't able to provide these positions, you would leave 8th grade at 6 teachers, you would go to 7 teachers?
No, we have to reallocate. And so that also means taking away from somewhere else. So that would impact not only the 8th grade, but another grade level within our building. So, and right now our current class sizes, based on current enrollment of 4th grade moving to 5th. So our rising 5th graders will be at 161, our 6th graders at 170, our 7th graders at 172, and our 8th grade at 174 next year. And that's for any move-ins, which we have move-ins every year. We don't have as many move-outs, but we have any move-ins and before adding any school choice slots. So that's where we're getting that average number for. So it does become critical. And then last year we had 2 special education positions that we lost, one through attrition, one it was retirement that we didn't refill due to budget. We were able to, reconfigure to make sure that we had everybody's needs covered. And then we had one special educator who's still with us, but they've moved to the academic position within our bridge program. So they're not functioning as a special educator in quite the same way, where previously they may have been co-teaching 3 to 4 classes, right? They're not. And so thinking about higher population next year. And again, our commitment to ensuring that we have those co-teaching partnerships. Part of that is making sure, we can't add without any more teachers, we can't add any more sections that would support that. So the number of students in those sections that might need that service increase, but also
a key component of the co-teaching model is to ensure that they have common planning time together. And when we're crossing grade levels or crossing multiple grade levels with a special educator, that becomes much harder to do. Right? As opposed to when, they're on a grade level team schedule and
Yeah.
things like that. So
2 of our current 5 special ed teachers are crossing grade levels and don't have common planning time with the general ed teacher that they're co-planning with.
So is this slide in priority order?
Yes, I mean,
mean, if we said-
think about total population versus,
Yeah.
but
I
at
mean,
the
if we
same,
came forward and said 1, we said we had 2,
right.
Is this the way you want it?
The ELA and math teacher kind of go together. So about that piece. I don't know how we would have to make a decision about what that one teacher was if only one grade 8 teacher was added.
Yeah.
And again, that would have impact across another grade level. So we have to think critically about how we made that happen.
Sure.
Right. So that's what we're thinking as we're thinking for next year. So again, going back to the budget being a reflection of our value of having kids at the center of it, making sure that we can have that equitable experience for students, that all of our students are supported. That this for us was for the asks that we need. And then our last slide, this is kind of a, again, our staffing, we just talked about those, but thinking ahead to the future, kind of foreshadowing what we might need is a designated EL teacher for NISCO. Right now, we share an EL teacher between the middle school and the high school. And so again, thinking about support for students, having a teacher that only services NISCO allows for greater collaboration and support for students, but also ensuring that when students are receiving support for EL services, that it can be kind of thought about in terms of our master schedule versus somebody who's trying to move between 2 building schedules. And sometimes that's not always matching up. So students are being pulled from other spaces to receive services at times. And then thinking long-term, we don't have a library media specialist right now at NISCO. We do have some, dedicated parent volunteers that come in and help us with certain aspects of the library. Certainly it's not at the top of the priority list right now as we're just starting to build our library back and think about what it could be within our school, but I would project moving forward that would be something that we would want to ask for in the future. And again, as I think we talked about this last year as well, just the idea that if we think about a more robust model for world language at NISCO, supported by our schedule and thinking about what that means for students, there will most likely be an ask for world language teachers in the future. Some of our other, facilities requests, and I'm sure this will come within capital planning and some of those other spaces, but additional sound dampening in our cafeteria is a place that we would like to augment what we've already done this year. Locker painting and replacement. So those are really specifically the lockers in our lower back hallway that are used by our 5th graders and are the ones that are near our classrooms and 2 of our 5th grade classrooms that are they're kind of worse for wear. They need some updating. And then we have at least 1 additional classroom, 1 science classroom left for a tiled floor. The tiled floors look great and they look a lot cleaner in the school. So as we continue to replace flooring, that we would ask for tiled flooring moving forward in some of those spaces. And then future upgrades, kind of thinking about lab tables, specifically in our 8th grade classrooms, and storage in our 6th and 7th grade science classrooms. They have limited storage for supplies. And then upgrades to our library furniture. So when we did our kind of glow up last year with We Care and our community volunteers, we were able to, reutilize most things that were in the library. Thinking forward, if we think about the classroom space that we created, they're the big heavy tables that are hard to move, but that is flexible space that we use for some different things. So being able to have furniture that easily
they flip and they go and then bring back out some updated furniture for that library would be an important thing to consider, looking forward. And then curricular resources, we are in a cycle of looking at ELA curricular resources for next year for the 6th through 8th. We're reviewing right now, and the science curriculum resources will also be under review next year. So thinking ahead to those. Any questions?
So the FY 26, you have the full-time employee request, but not the estimation of the facilities expense. So is that part of the plan, or I don't know how we're?
The facilities doesn't officially fall in their
Right.
budget, so that's.
Okay.
That'll come in.
Kind of address it,
A
but
different budget.
I always ask all of them to identify
Yep.
their top needs so they can communicate it at the table.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Any other questions?
So I have one other question, since you guys are here, and it's a popular subject last year. Is Junior National Honor Society coming back?
We have 2 advisors this year.
Great.
We are officially registered as a chapter of the Junior National Honor Society. And our 2 advisors are getting that up and running with our 8th grade this year and then projecting for our 7th grade for next year.
Great.
So we were able to identify advisors and reinstate our chapter.
Good. Congrats, that's good news.
That is.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, school committee subcommittees. The budget committee on January 15th, Jim, those
Sure.
quick highlights?
The last budget subcommittee met on January 15th, discussed the recent updates in the budget development process. It was great to hear that the state aid is slightly higher than anticipated, so that's great impact to the budget, closing the gap there. The next meeting was scheduled for February. The next meeting was scheduled for February 12th, but we'll need to reschedule that as we'll have meeting with the select boards from Mendon-Upton.
Multi-board.
Yes, the multi-board. So,
All right. Carrie, you want to pinch hit for Vicky, give us an update on policy committee?
I'm glad it's you.
I told you I volunteered.
Okay, good.
Fine. We met earlier tonight and we talked about graduation policies and we're continuing to work on updating the social media policy. Tonight we are bringing forward for you all 4 policies for second reading, which include school committee member orientation, school committee conferences, conventions and workshops, school committee legislative programs, and security cameras in school. So we would need motions and votes to approve those 4 for a second reading. And then we also are bringing forward bullying prevention, JCIFB. We decided to waive the first reading. Desi has recommended that we make some changes to this policy. It's linked in your background documents. You can see that most of the biggest change is the removal of a single word. It's down on page 3 that we've been recommended to remove from that policy. So those are what we have for you all tonight.
I think somebody could make a single fancy motion to do all 5.
motion to approve policy BIA, BIBA, BJ, ECAF, and JCIFB.
I second that fancy motion.
Any discussion or questions? Just make sure you have an opportunity. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
And we've approved 5 motions. All right. Negotiation subcommittee, there's no updates. Superintendent evaluation committee, I don't think you guys have met. Carrie, meeting on the 4th of February.
Correct.
All right. Capital planning ad hoc committee. Matt, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so the capital planning ad hoc subcommittee met on January 22nd last week. We have kind of narrowed, honing in on final capital plan. We've documents, sent off to MSBA as part of the roof project, kind of captures that. It's basically kind of focuses on three key areas of needs, life needs. So that's things like the roof and the management systems, HVAC here, seals at Cultural Memorial. There are things, the second category is student and programmatic impacts. So that's things like municipal fields, auditorium, seats, municipal carpeting, flooring, municipal bathrooms, lockers, as mentioned. And then the third category is safety and security. So this is things like key card entry systems, aging systems at the various buildings, curbs and sidewalks, and memorial cloth, as well as data cabling for the various internet things all in the school. So that's kind of the three key areas of the plan. We've decided to recommend moving forward at various town meetings this spring with a budget request to seek funding for this little plan. And the next step is that we're gonna have a multi-board meeting on 12th. Select boards of the two towns to sort of make sure that our capital plan, their various capital planning, is all kind of alignment.
Great. Yeah. Alrighty, future agenda item. Hey, more budget presentations.
You're welcome.
And we will.
Unspecified.
Unspecified. just like
I just
that.
keep saying budget, I don't know.
And we will talk about the school calendar again. So with that, I think we should take a motion to adjourn.
Need to adjourn the next meeting.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at 9:28.